Hi, welcome and thank you for watching. In this video I'm going to tell you my story about the last time I took ayahuasca, which was exactly 1 year ago, on November 16th, 2017, in South Spain. So the reason why I want to share this story is because I find it very important how the medicine is being taken. And it's not only about understanding what it is, if you can actually explain it, if you can actually understand it, because the whole thing is, well, quite mind-blowing, and every single experience is different. It's unique. It's completely designed for who you are at that stage in your life. It's not only about the medicine, but it's also about the whole process. That's very important. And by process I mean everything around it, the preparation, but also understanding and evaluating your experience and learning from it. Because in many cases it's not going to be something that's very quick. Yeah, like in my case, I didn't understand the whole experience and how it was supposed to help me for a very long time. So in this video I'm going to tell you my ayahuasca experience during my first ayahuasca retreat. This was my second ceremony that I've done. I actually created a almost 40-minute long video about the previous experience, and I don't know how long this video will be. I do want to cover a lot of different topics that I find important. So this is it. First of all, I would like to start with how I actually started the first video, meaning that if you don't know what ayahuasca is, if you don't know too much about the medicine, this is not a video in which I will explain what it is. So I will, throughout the video, I will add and share some of the resources. Those can be links to different videos, articles, or different kind of resources that I find helpful. Because again, this context is very important, and you don't have to understand everything, you don't have to know everything, but it is essential that you know the basics. And again, I don't once again, I don't consider myself the right kind of authority with the right kind of expertise to introduce you to the Amazon medicine. So something that I can add at this stage is perhaps the way I first found out about the ayahuasca, and that was a couple of years ago. I believe like 2 or 3 years ago, and I don't remember which person was it. It was I believe it was Lyon, who created an amazing website called Reset.me, and it's actually, she used to be a CNN reporter, Emmy awarded a CNN reporter who used to travel to war areas, and she would cover different items and reports from there. And one time she actually got assaulted by the security forces of the government that CNN itself was promoting. So she was held at a gunpoint, and needless to say, that was a very traumatic experience. And she couldn't take it anymore. She quit her work for CNN and actually started to look for a solution to her trauma that she eventually found in psilocybin and DMT. And DMT is a component that you can find in ayahuasca, but it's at the same time it's at the same time created. You can find it in plants, you can find it in animals, and you can also find it in your own system, because it's created by our brains, and it's most likely that particle that is responsible for our dreams. So that was most likely how I learned about the medicine. Some of very interesting people that talk about ayahuasca that I am very that interest me are usually Joe Rogan and Aubrey Marcus, but also but also very interesting interview with Sting, who took his who participated in his first ceremony in Brazil, and there is a very interesting 30-minute long video in which he explains his experience, and it's actually quite inspiring to watch. So okay, so that's about ayahuasca. My experience with ayahuasca started at the beginning of 2016 when I participated in my first ceremony, and to summarize, it was a very, very difficult experience. First of all, because I really came from a position of ego where I tried to prove myself, meaning that when we had different rounds of taking the medicine, and the shamans actually allowed us to determine whether we feel good enough to take the next shot. And where for the most people that participated in the ceremony, it was 1 or 2 drinks, but I started to feel so confident and actually so cocky that I ended up drinking 3 times. And that's when I got punished, because it was by far the most beautiful experience that ended up in being the most nightmarish, terrible, terrifying experiences in my life. Of course, I came back to reality very happy. And it's actually when I talk about my first experience and my first ceremony, and people ask me how, of course, most people are interested about what I've seen or how I felt or what I understood at the time. But to be honest, I kind of came back to reality with an idea that I got. I didn't understand why it was so intensive. I didn't understand why it was so terrifying, because some of the things I've seen, at one point I probably even experienced my death in previous life. And it's actually a very sinister thing to describe, very personal too. And again, it's very open for interpretation. It could be simply a vision, but I still choose to see it in a way that it was some kind of experience from my previous life or lives. So so a lot of people ask me how this experience was, but I think most importantly it was how I benefited from this experience, from my first ceremony. And I'm happy to say that it kind of changed my life. I always use the phrase that there is life before ayahuasca and there is life after ayahuasca. And in this case, before my first ceremony and throughout my adult, teenage and adult life, I'm pretty sure that I suffered from what you can call a social anxiety, meaning that I was always shy, I was always insecure, and I felt very, very uncomfortable when I was with other people. And during my ayahuasca experience, and again, that was an experience that started very like very beautifully. And again, if you are interested about my first ceremony, about my first experience, there is a 40-minute long video in which I explain it in details, and I'm going to add it in the description as well. But basically, an experience that started really as something very beautiful and very inspiring, especially for me as an artist. It was very visual, things I've never seen in my life before, and I'm actually confident to say that I haven't seen ever after. That experience shifted to a very, very negative experience, and it really felt like dying. It really felt like dying, and so I got to a point that I understood that if I would die at that moment, the experience wouldn't change. I mean, I would die, I would kind of leave my body, but the experience itself would last, because it was something more than only my body. As something I really felt and believed in at that time. So basically, at the deepest, lowest point of this experience, I felt very lonely, and I always describe it as a hopeless kind of loneliness. Like, I mean, I was lying on a mattress in a room full of people who were on a journey with me, who were on their own journey, and I was even surrounded with two of my best friends. I felt I was in the right place. However, I've never felt so lonely like this. It was like a hopeless loneliness. Like it felt like it would never end, and that I would never feel connection and love and positive feelings again. That's and also the whole experience felt like it lasts for forever, for years. I always mention that it felt, if I can summarize my first ayahuasca experience, my first ayahuasca ceremony, it felt like I was stuck on a lonely island for 10 years, and then I came back, meaning that I approached every single relationship in my life, and all the new ones, all the contexts, all the social interactions, as something special, as I haven't seen them in 10 years. I even still, those experiences, this whole period, the weeks after my ayahuasca experience, is still one of the most beautiful periods in my life, and I continued to learn from the experience even months and months later, because you kind of during the ayahuasca experience you kind of get a new reference, if it makes any sense. Like, you can always go back to that experience and understand how beautiful or terrifying it was. And that's why some of our daily problems and small challenges, they are not so important anymore. They don't have this weight anymore. So that's about, so that was about my first experience. My second ayahuasca experience, my second ayahuasca ceremony took place approximately 10 or 11 months after the first one, and it was in the south of Spain, during a retreat, during a 7-day retreat. And that's the last thing I'm going to share about the details, where it was and with whom who was my shaman, or who were the other participants of the retreat, because I do respect their privacy, and some of them, because it's all very personal, and I think some of them would be very happy to be mentioned in this story. Some of them wouldn't, and that's why I just choose to describe those people, but not too specific, no details, no names. And basically I was introduced to retreat because it was organized by one of my clients, and it was organized in her house. It was an amazing place, just an amazing place, a big Spanish villa. It wasn't even a Spanish villa, it was actually a small castle, like a palace. And this whole property was just gigantic. I mean, there was a swimming pool, and there were gardens, and there was even a separate house with bedrooms as well. So it was huge. And for the time of the retreat, that was our territory, that was our area, and we didn't leave this area, and also nobody from the outer world, from outside, was allowed in for 7 days. So actually that's one of the first points that I want to describe. That was amazing about this retreat, and that those were the rules. I loved the rules, and one of those rules was that we would be disconnected from the outer world, and disconnected in a way that we could have our phones, but yeah, it was advised not to use your email or your phone or send messages or go outside. And all of us respected the rules. And actually, at the very beginning, when we switched off, we determined which time and hour it will be. I mean, you're sending your last messages to your friends. Some of them know what you're doing, some of them don't, and you just say that, hey, I'm going to be doing I usually used to say that I'm going to a silence retreat and I just can't use my phone. So I set up the autoresponder on my email. I tried to respond to as much emails as possible, and then we switched off. And I must say that was one of the most amazing experiences, was just to be disconnected, not to use TV, not to use the social media, not to watch the news, not to communicate with the outer world. And it's funny how our mind works, because very soon, you know, the moment you disconnect, it really, like your ego, there is a lot of resistance, because you feel like you have to be connected. When it comes to technology, you feel, you know, you feel that you have to be up to date about everything that goes on in the world. I mean, that was just 1 week after Donald Trump was elected. There was a lot of things going on. And of course, you wanted to check the Facebook, you wanted to check the Instagram, but all the notifications were turned off, and I actually turned off the Wi-Fi in my phone, and I just used the Wi-Fi on my laptop to play the music. But all the other notifications, you know, all the email things, I actually usually have them turned off. But for that occasions, everything was turned off. And the moment you do it, you kind of, you know, it's like a leap of faith. You step into this a very strange kind of dimension, very strange kind of reality that you are not really familiar with, because you haven't experienced it since you were a small child, probably. I mean, I'm in a generation when I was a kid, we didn't have internet, we didn't watch too much TV. I mean, of course we did, but not too much. And but when you think back, when was the last time that you were completely disconnected, apart from, I don't know, flying in an airplane, or having an internet, or your internet not working because there were some technical problems? I don't know, you know, it makes you think. But the moment I disconnected, it felt like it felt strange at first, but then it felt like freedom, like you started to, the moment you disconnected, you started to connect with yourself. You started to connect with others. You suddenly go back to this, natural way of communication. Just natural way of communication without without distractions and without all those external incentives. And it's it's an amazing thing to experience. It felt like meditating for 7 days. It was amazing. I'm simply I'm getting quite sentimental about this period because it felt special. It was special, and I can recommend it to anyone. And you don't have to go to an ayahuasca retreat. You can create those kind of conditions in your own home for yourself. It just takes some self-awareness and some self-discipline. And of course, you can always go to a silence retreat as well, which I highly recommend. So yeah, a little bit about the people that participated. Very different people. Most of them were British. We are in south of Spain, in not too far from Marbella, actually between Marbella and Malaga. And beautiful. We are in at the beginning of November when the retreat began, and the weather is still amazing. It's not really summer anymore, but it's still much better than back in Netherlands when I was at the time. And interesting people. Some of them I already knew, some of them I didn't, but I could instantly connect with any one of them, and different kind of people. From simple young guys to, and by simple I mean I probably don't remember what they did, but some of them are artists, some of them are experts, coaches, YouTube influencers, where some of them have financial backgrounds. It was interesting. There were seven participants. And there was our shaman and her assistant, and I very soon I discovered that I was actually the only one, except for the shaman, who actually took ayahuasca before, and that didn't give me any kind of authority, but I very soon I felt like this need to support others, because I remember how frightening it was for me at the first time. So I kind of connected with my deepest values, and one of my deepest values is to serve, is to help others, and that's why I felt the responsibility to help the shaman, to help others, and of course to help myself as well. We didn't. Being disconnected is one thing, but also we didn't use any alcohol, any drugs. We were on a vegan diet, also before the retreat, like 2 or 3 weeks before the night of the ceremony. We were advised not to use any of them, and also to stop eat, actually to switch to the vegan diet, which I've never done before. And in the beginning it was very strange, but very soon we discovered that it was just amazing. We would breakfast together, we would have dinners together, and it was all vegan, all natural, and it felt really right. It felt really right. So a little bit about the retreat. We planned our ceremony on the 4th day, on the 4th night, and that was November 16th. And that was the night of the strongest full moon in 70 years. So we knew that something's big is about to happen. like brace yourself, you know. I mean, we were already counting days, weeks before, and eventually those were days and hours that led to the ceremony. And to be honest, I'm going to explain you. I'm going to share my ayahuasca experience in a moment. But if when looking back at the whole retreat, it wasn't actually the ayahuasca ceremony that was the most amazing and mind-blowing experience. It was the retreat itself, and our amazing shaman, who was like a mother to us. She didn't only lead us throughout the ceremony itself, but we were doing a lot of things and activities throughout the retreat, and I was very, very happy to experience them, to discover them, because most of them were not only the Amazon traditions, but there were traditions from the American Indians, from the native Indians as well. I can give you an example. We were one day before the ceremony, we built a sweat lodge. And for those who don't know what a sweat lodge is, it's like a natural sauna that used to be, and hopefully still is, built by Indians with all the natural components, and that was amazing. We would also meditate or chant in the tower, because we chose that the tower would be our the place where we would have the ceremony. And another amazing experience was when we were asked to connect with our spirit animal, our power animals, and that was something I knew about, that something like this exists, but I never discovered mine. So we were doing that. I wouldn't call it a meditation, but it was like a hypnosis, but which was created. It was a trance that was created through drums. That were brought by our shaman, and the drum was called Arvin, and it was again one of the most magical and spiritual experiences was when I discovered my spiritual animal. And the way we did it, we were asked to go to a happy place, to imagine ourselves standing in a place that we associated with a lot of positive emotions, like something from the past, perhaps a place from your childhood, and to go there and to anticipate the power animal. And for me, it was a beautiful field in Poland where I grew up. Still, for me, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And the spiritual animal that appeared, that presented itself to me, was a falcon. And that was for me like, wow, that's beautiful. I love those animals. And it wasn't like, imagine yourself what's your favorite animal, or choosing the coolest animal there is because that's going to be your spirit animal. No, it had to be spontaneous, and it had to be natural. And for some of our participants, it didn't even occur, it didn't even happen. But for me, it happened very, very fast, and I was quite moved, not emotionally, but I was very positively surprised that the spirit animal came to me. So and I still, and falcons are still a very important symbol to me, and that's a story for another video. So I'm going to describe my ceremony and my ayahuasca experience in a moment. I just wanted to describe perhaps the most epic, the most mind-blowing experience, moment of our whole retreat. And that was actually when we were building a fire for our sweat lodge, meaning that we would gather stones from the whole area. We would go and look for stones, and we would take them with we would pick them up and exchange them with some kind of prayer, and then we would build those stones. We would build a fire and set it on fire. And it really, that was I believe after we built the whole sweat lodge, which also took us like 2 hours. And and again it took another 1 hour to build this whole pyre. And to give you a little bit of a context, the weather was just amazing. There was no wind. There were almost no clouds, like a clear sky. And throughout the whole day, this was like noon or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or something like in the afternoon. But the whole day it was amazing weather and there was no wind. And the moment we gather around this pyre and we set it on fire, all of us, that's when it all starts to happen. And something that is still very, very hard for me to describe, and that's the wind starting to blow, but not like a gust of wind, something very, like occasional wind out of nowhere. It really started to blow. And so as the fire started to rise and all the smoke started to come out, this wind started to blow this smoke and fire up in the sky. And I mean, it was just special, because there was sun shining behind a tree, and all those rays of light were shining upon us. And then like one of us starts to yell, look above us, look in the sky. And there was a group of pigeons circling around us, circling above us. I mean, a group of pigeons, and it all happened at the same time. And we were like, for those of us who were skeptical, about the whole thing, and they believed in many things. That's like when I heard about the spirits the first time at the beginning of my first ceremony, and I was very skeptical because I simply didn't understand it. It wasn't like I didn't want to, but it's like you have to experience it yourself in order to believe it. And for those of us who didn't believe in all those spiritual fuzzy thing, that was the moment when all of us, without any exception, started to believe it couldn't be a coincidence. So, thus we arrive at the experience itself, the ceremony. Roughly 30-35 minutes in. If you are still listening, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I share this story for myself, really, because not only I want to kind of relive it, but I kind of again, I'm kind of sentimental about the whole thing. But if you're listening, thank you so much. And now I'm going to tell you about the ceremony itself, starting with the intention. And intention, having the right intention, and especially intention that you believe in, and having just one intention, is probably one of the most important points when it comes to drinking ayahuasca, because you really have to know why you do it. You have to be honest. Above all, you have to be honest to yourself. But of course, you have to be honest to others as well. And in our case, we didn't have to share the intention with everybody around us, but we did have to consult our shaman and speak with her about it. And so basically, myself, at the beginning of the retreat, I kind of had two intentions, and one of them being inspiration and direction, meaning I wanted to know if I'm on the right path. I wanted to be inspired. I wanted to see what's possible. And and the second intention that I could choose from was to find courage. And I knew that if I'm going to choose for the second one, forgive my French, I'm fucked. I knew that if I'm going to ask for courage, I will be confronted with a lot, and I will go through hell, no doubt about it. So I choose for the latter one. I choose for the second one, and I knew, like, Edmund, brace yourself. This is it. This is the moment. And this is it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult, but you will survive the experience, and you will come back as a stronger and most likely better person. So the day of the ceremony, we decided that we were going to take it around 10 in the night. So throughout the day, we were asked to save our energy, not to mingle too much with each other, keep our energy clear, and just write a lot, meditate. Don't use too much energy. Keep it for ourselves. It was quite silence around the retreat. Of course, we were talking with each other, and we were. Some of the participants, they were curious about my first experience, and I also decided to share for what I felt that was appropriate at the time, and that was relevant, and I left, and I choose to leave some of the moments from my of my previous ceremony on purpose, because I just didn't want to scare them. Also, at the same time, I kind of I felt like some of the participants were watching me. Like, am I ready? How do I react to it? Am I afraid? Of course I was afraid. I was freaking out. But I chose to kind of be a most stoic and controlled version of myself, not only for them but also for myself, because I really needed it. So I spent the most of the day on journaling and meditating. And last but not least, something I wanted to add is that meditation was effortless throughout the whole retreat. Like, you are so connected with yourself, you are so disconnected from all the technology and distractions that it's a child play to meditate and just switch off, and that was amazing. So we were wearing like a ceremonial clothes, meaning like our own clothes, but something that's white. And I had the black trousers because I didn't have anything white when it comes to trousers, and a white t-shirt. And of course, around noon, that was our last dinner, because we had to drink the medicine on an empty stomach. And one by one we entered the tower, where everything was prepared for the ceremony. And when we were finally there, we spoke a lot, you know, with the shaman. The medicine was there already, and I have to add that the ayahuasca itself, the bottle of ayahuasca itself, was 7 years old. It came from the jungle, it came from the South America, but it was 7-year-old. So we didn't know what to expect, and but I guess it was quite strong. So yeah, our shaman knew our intentions. We had written it down just before entering the tower, and as she was pouring the medicine, she was also praying for us, and she was also stating the intention for us and blowing it into the shot. And we received the medicine. We took a very deep breath in, and we drank it. And something that was very different from my first ceremony is, during my first ceremony we had some light. We had some candles where the shamans were, so we kind of could see each other. But then, but during this ceremony, we didn't have any light, and also we didn't have any kind of pre-recorded music, meaning that our shaman had instruments, and she would be singing throughout the ceremony as well. So when we drank, we said goodbye to each other. We said good luck, bon voyage, and everyone in our own way, we turned off the lights, we blew the candles, and we started to anticipate. And I must say that it didn't really work in the beginning, meaning that me myself, I was laying in the tower on my mattress, and and I was afraid. Of course I was afraid, because I knew, like, there's no coming back from it, there's no turning back. So I was stating those kind of like affirmations to myself, to like, I am grateful for this, I'm grateful for that, thank you so much, thank you for the upcoming experience, keep me safe. I don't remember who I was praying to, but it was like a self, you know, it was like an inner dialogue, or whispering to myself, that helped me a lot. And it actually took a lot of time and no experience whatsoever. It was like at least an hour. Then our shaman, she candled the light, and she gave us a second round. For those who felt like they wanted a second drink, they received it. Only me, I didn't get one, and that was because during my first ceremony I took too much, and so this like a half, like 50% or 40% even of a shot that I got. That was everything I got that night, and thank God to that, to be honest. So the moment some of us, all the participants, they drank again, but the moment when they drink it, I start to feel this shift. I start to feel the experience beginning, but in a very delicate way, and I felt it like vibrations throughout the whole night, the whole experience. I would have very little visuals. Something I remembered from from my first ayahuasca experience, and something I know from psilocybin and LSD. But during this experience, I didn't get it a lot. I know that other participants did, but in my case, it started to I started to listen to myself. Most of us were lying down, but I was sitting upright, and I started to listen to myself and playing with sound, because I remember that at the beginning of my first ceremony, one of those first effects was that everything was slowing down, and the sound would be very slow and very extended, and that's how I started to hear all of it, and I would begin to make sounds like whispering, um, uh, or something like this, like, and with every breath I would make another sound, and very soon it was like there was a storm raging outside. Like inside we were in a perfectly safe place, but there was like a storm, and I could hear it through my voice and all the sounds that I was making. And I noticed that nobody stopped me. I didn't want to interrupt anyone in their experience, or distract them, or intervene, but I started to those noises started to change, and I kind of didn't control it. It was like channeling, and I would eventually later I would describe it as translating the vibrations and energy coming from the ground into the sky through my lungs, if it makes any sense. So it started with simple, like, after that I would make sounds like, and so on and so on, and again, I wasn't controlling it. I just felt like I'm just going to do it in the most natural and congruent way. So those voices, those sounds that I was making, soon changed to humming, and again I will try to kind of repeat them. It would always start with a very, very deep breath, and then I would start to hum. It would sound like, and every single time they would be louder. They would be like at some point I felt like screaming, and it was I heard this whole spectrum of sounds. It was like a trance that I was creating, this whole experience, and even other participants told me later that they would trip on my sounds. They would kind of, they would see a visual, a translation of those sounds, even though I didn't see any visuals. They would see it in form of patterns, something that I can vividly remember from my first experience. And it went on for like 40 minutes. And after that, I started to chant. And it sounded like, again, I wasn't controlling it, but I just started to like, ayahuasca, 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 ayahuasca. And I continued channeling someone like shamans somewhere at the same time, like I felt like they were doing the same ritual somewhere in the South America. When I was doing that, I wasn't controlling it. I wasn't doing that for significance, or I was like trying to entertain others. Nothing of it. I was just letting it out. And suddenly I stopped. And then I started to laugh. And that's one of those moments that I remember from my other psychedelic experience, more recreational ones. And that was when everybody in the room started to laugh. And we were laughing our eyes off. We were laughing for a good couple of minutes. That was one of those amazing things and amazing moments. And I was very happy that everybody was safe and sound. You know, because until that moment, I heard people. You know, some of them were purging already. You know, some of them were sobbing, crying. You know, but now we were laughing, all of us, and that was the right moment. That was an amazing moment, and soon I discovered that that I was entering into another phase of my experience, and that would be finding courage. So as I mentioned, my intention was to find courage, and I knew that this first phase of my experience wasn't really, it was mentioned, it was probably meant as, you know, this initiation to the ceremony, but the way in which I would find courage was yet to happen. And the moment we stopped laughing, and again we were in a room where there was no music, and we weren't talking with each other, we weren't communicating, and every once in a while our shaman would sing something or play something, but there were also those moments of silence, and I felt, wow, the moment we stopped laughing, I also didn't feel like making any kind of sounds. I just lay down on my mattress, and I felt like, whoa, the whole room started to feel itself with this dark energy, and at least that's how I felt it. Like darkness. It was already pitch black there. I mean, you could kind of see each other, the silhouettes. You knew who's where. But this darkness started to fill the room, the space, and it was like terrifying. It was really terrifying. I can't really explain this experience. I mean, everyone who's ever had a bad trip knows that it's nothing that you can that it's nothing rational. It's always emotional. When you have a bad trip, or somebody's having a bad trip, you can't just tell this person like, hey, relax, it's all going to be fine, you are just tripping, you just took a drug. This experience will last. This experience will end. It doesn't work this way. And in this case as well, I started to feel, again, very lonely, on my own, and just terrified. just terrified. And I think the most difficult part of that experience is just how long it takes. I mean, we're in a dark room. We don't have any kind of reference of what time it is, and it's we found this context. You feel like a ship in the middle of the ocean. And there's not too much that you can do. And I started to be confronted with a whole spectrum of dark and negative feelings. And until that time, I still haven't purged. I still haven't vomited, and I didn't feel like it. Again, at that point, I felt like I probably won't be vomiting this time. And I didn't take too much. I mean, I take not even the whole shot. And this agony continued for some time, but it was a silent agony, where every minute feels like an hour, every second feels like a minute, and you are there all alone. Then came the moment when the visions appeared, and by visions I don't mean like I've seen things with my eyes open or that they were very vivid, but those were like thoughts. And this is actually the part that I'm not going to share, and because it's quite personal, and to be honest, it's quite dark, and it has something. It's a small trauma of mine from my childhood, something that a lot of people will most likely relate to, but simply how I discovered it, how I experienced it at that moment will be just too sinister and too dark and too graphic to explain. So I'm just going to skip it. I'm also going to skip the experience of one other participant who was on her journey, which was very loud, like the whole spectrum of a panic attack, laughing, screaming, yeah, it was a very strange situation. But again, this was an ayahuasca ceremony. You can expect almost everything. Others, their experiences were just like mine, quite silent, or one would be crying and the other would be vomiting, purging. And that was, when I was confronted with my trauma, with my fears, with the things that I just couldn't handle at that moment, I think at some point I started to understand that why I'm here, why am I drinking the medicine, and what's the takeaway from all of this. And that's when I started to look inside, and I started to look for this courage inside me. For some reason, at some point, I just started to look. I just started to look inside, and look for all the resources I had, like confidence, or trust, or belief, or faith, or hope, or optimism, all of it, until I found courage. And it wasn't like a courage that you would expect, like you are like you are a warrior, or you are the strongest, best version of yourself. It was a very kind of stoic type of courage. Just trusting yourself, just loving yourself, just looking inside instead of outside. And even now when I'm talking about it, it makes me think like how important that experience was. I was one of one. We are. That's really like how life is. And as soon as I started to look inside, that's when I started to feel better. That was like a way out. I was purging that night, but I was purging for someone else. I wasn't purging my own energy. I was purging an energy of the other person in that room that really needed it. And she actually, as far as I remember, she actually experienced it in that way. So that being said, that was like 30 minutes, 45 minutes later. We one by one we ended the ceremony, and that wasn't the end of the night. Some of us would stay in the big house. Others would go to their beds in the other room. That the ceremony ended, but for the experience for some of us was would last for some time, even throughout the whole night. And even I had extreme difficulty with falling asleep. Because even though I was in a room, in my bedroom, with very thick walls, then I still could hear everybody who was either whispering or talking in the whole house. I could hear it like they were all in the room next door. And I couldn't fall asleep, so I just put on some music. I was listening to Bob Marley, which is my go-to music when I don't feel too good during a psychedelic experience. And I was trying everything. I mean, at some point I was even counting sheep, or I was just counting. And when I arrived at 150, I just understood that it wasn't really working for me at that moment. And eventually, of course, I fell asleep. And you know, the last time I did ayahuasca, I mean the last time before this ceremony, I would we would wake up, we would clean up, and we would go back home. And in my case, I would travel. I found myself in the center of Amsterdam with approximately 1 million people around me, and that was just I believe like 12 hours after my first ceremony ever, of my first experience ever. So that was a very, very that wasn't a good way to do it. And that's why I was so grateful for this experience, for this retreat, because we still had a couple of days that we were in the retreat, that we were disconnected, that we were with each other. You know, by this moment we felt like family. You know, it's you get to know each other, but you get to connect with each other. You know, you share some of your deepest secrets during the retreat. You laugh together, you cry together. You know, you really completely trust yourself and each other. We're just one of our favorite things was just to sit around the fire in the main room, and on those couches, and we were just smoking cigarettes and enjoying the fire. That was in silence or with some music, and that's still one of the most beautiful things that we did. We also woke up every single morning at the sunrise, and we were drinking the medicine, not ayahuasca, but the other kind of medicine that wasn't psychedelic. But you know, it brought us in a very it had something to do with herbs, but we would drink it. It had a very interesting taste, and we would be praying to the west, to the north, to the east, to the south, and the rest of the morning until the breakfast, which would be like around 8 or 9, one of those. We would be silent. So throughout the whole morning we would be in silence. You know, we didn't talk to each other until breakfast. And yeah, that was a retreat. We felt like, I mean, at least me, I felt like, first of all, it felt like a month, like we were, you know, going back to reality was a very interesting experience. It felt like we were the last people on earth, and we were there in this house, caring for each other and cooking for each other and helping each other and speaking with each other. You know, that's how our mind works. You know, we are so distracted. We have so many distractions, so many external incentives that we don't feel this connection anymore. You know, we are not connected with each other. We are not connected with the nature. We are not connected with ourselves, and I think that's a shame. I think that's a missed opportunity for a better life, for better, you know, for a happier life, but also for a better world, where we can live, you know, connected, and we can live in peace. So that was my retreat. That was exactly 1 year ago when I drank ayahuasca for the last time, and it's been an interesting year, I must say. I mean, I changed a lot when it comes to my lifestyle, especially with different things I took or smoked, and I also took the advice of my shaman very seriously, who said that she didn't advise me to take ayahuasca again until I really learned from my previous experiences, which in this case there were 2. So we on the last day we did the fire walk, which was amazing, and sure enough, one by one we would leave the retreat and go back to reality, which felt like a limitless world. You know, after staying just 1 day, after staying just 1 week in one house and doing the ayahuasca ceremony, you know, going back to reality, it felt like a outer space. It was just gigantic. So, thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to recommend my shaman, who is a Scottish woman called Mama Bear, an amazing, beautiful old soul with such a touching story about herself. I love to connect with people, but I'm very I don't connect often, you know, and I don't trust too much. I don't trust others too much, and not in a victim way, but more like, you know, my trust is one of the most you know, important and biggest assets that I have, and you have to be very, very very careful with it, with who you trust. But Mama Bear has really been a mother to us throughout this whole retreat, and I'm respectful for how she managed to deal with all of it, because there are a lot of things that I didn't mention in this podcast or in this video. A lot of kind of, you know, extreme situations, especially during the ceremony, and again, it's quite private, it's quite personal, you know. I don't feel in position to share it. However, I highly recommend her, you know, because 1 year later I feel a different person, and this retreat will still be one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And nobody is able to take it away from me. And thank you so much. I'm going to wrap up. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that that this was an interesting story. I hope that it was relevant. You know, at any point, leave a question. You know, if you have any questions regarding ayahuasca or retreats or my own experience, just leave a question. Just leave a comment in the comment section. But also, you know, I would love to hear from you. You know, from your own experience. You know, or perhaps you have shared your experience as well somewhere, and you would love to drop a link in a comment. That would be great. Until then, thank you so much. You know, whoever you are, that you are. Thank you. Have a great evening. Good night.